video. Yeah, now you can see.
Hello.
Oh, big shark. Hi guys, thanks for stopping by today. Great to see you all. Now this video today is for the newbies who are going to the Philippines, and a checklist, let's call it a checklist of what you will need to do to make sure you get to the Philippines in a manner that's not going to cause you stress and worry. So a few important things you've got to be checking prior to going. So make sure, first up, the big one is make sure your passport is current, obviously, and make sure that it has at least 6 months till expiry from the day you get to the Philippines, or the day you're leaving to go to the Philippines. A lot of, well, pretty much all countries won't allow you in unless you've got more than 6 months on your passport before it expires. I know with us, for our upcoming trip in April, we had to go, we went, I think it was back in October or somewhere around October last year, we had to go to the Philippine Embassy to renew my wife's passport, because come April she only had about 3 months left on it. Even though we were going to be back in Australia by the time it expired, we still had to, we didn't have enough time that they would have rejected her at the airport, and then we couldn't have gone. So we went and got it renewed, and now she's got, you know, so many years on it, 5 years on it. So very important, make sure you've got more than 6 months at the time you're leaving on your passport. So start checking out your flights well before you go. If you want to get the best prices on flights, you need to do that around about a 3 or 4 month period before. Sometimes you can get them cheaper well out, 10 months. I was lucky, I got a fairly good price on our trip 10 months before we went. But that's not always the case. Generally speaking, airlines will have their best prices around about 3 to 4 months out. So start to check about 4 months before you go, and when you find a price you like, jump on that. I've got a website that you can check out as well. It's holidayescapetravel.com. That's holidayescapetravel.com, where you will get very good prices, especially on the international flights to the Philippines. So check that out. And I'll put the link below for that as well. It's in the link below. So you've got to decide then whether you want the direct flights, you want the stopovers. So if you want it cheaper, generally you might be looking at a stopover. Although it depends which country you're coming from. Here in Australia, you can get very, very good direct flights through places like Philippine Airlines, Cebu Pacific, which is a lower budget carrier, and you can get them very, very cheap flights. And by all counts, it's a bit hit and miss with the Cebu. Some people say it's good, some people not so good. But you know, I've never flown it, so I can't give you advice on that. Generally, I go by Qantas from Australia, which is, you know, obviously one of the best airlines in the world. Coming from places like USA is going to be a different matter, because I think most of the flights there you have to have a stopover, and it's a lot longer process getting there. So it might take you closer to 20 hours from if you're coming from the US, whereas in Australia, you know, we're there in 7.5, 8 hours. So work out whether you want direct or stopovers, and how long your layover may be in a particular country, and how long it's actually going to take you to get there, and what you're prepared to pay to maybe to get there a little bit quicker, because generally the long stopovers where you might have to stop somewhere overnight will be a little bit cheaper. But keep checking your flights periodically. You know, check the flights. Check them on a Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday was when the airlines put their new flights out, and usually that's when they have their cheaper airlines. And it's always cheaper to travel on a Wednesday. Wednesday's the cheaper day to travel. So forget a Sunday or a Saturday, because you're going to pay more for that. It's more popular. Wednesday's the day to do it if you can do it. And we're doing it. We're going on a Wednesday and coming back on a Wednesday. That's probably why we got pretty good prices. Next thing you've got to consider is vaccinations. Now, if you've never considered vaccinations, and new travellers don't often think about that unless they've read it somewhere, it's very important, especially if you're going to the Philippines, that you get your vaccinations against Hep A, Hep B, if you haven't already had those, typhoid, and you get your malaria tablets. So check your doctor and do that a minimum of 3 months before, because if you have to have the Hep A and Hep B shots, it's a series of 3 shots. You have your first one, then you wait a month and have another one, and I think it's another 1 or 2 months, and you get your third and final one. But you want to do that a minimum of 3 months before you go. So very important. See your doctor, and they'll give you the advice around that. But see your doctor 3 to 4 months before you go. Money when we're in the Philippines. What do we do about getting our cash? Getting. You don't want to be carrying cash around with you all the time, because if you get robbed, what do you got left? So things like, you can use things like, well, you got your ATM, your debit cards, you got your credit cards, which obviously come with higher fees. You've got, there's travel cards. You can get travel cards. I know in Australia you can get them from the particular banks. You can get them from the post office, and they're not bad value. For me, I like to use the Western Union. That's what we're going to be doing. I'm a member of Western Union, have been for several years, so I've earned enough points and whatever through sending money to family that I get cheaper transaction fees, if you like. So for me, Western Union is good, because I can just send it to myself from the Philippines, and I can go and pick it up 5 minutes after I've sent it, and the fees are not overly exorbitant for me. So that's pretty good from my point of view. I think some people previously have mentioned places like World Remit, Orbit Remit, a couple of other different places. I think MoneyGram, I think, from memory. So I don't know about those others so much. I've tried World Remit and Orbit Remit, and I wasn't overly impressed myself, but that's just my experience. So I stick with Western Union, simply because it's what I've used for a long time, and I've never had trouble with it, so it's worth it to me. So obviously you want to check if you're going to need a visa to go to the Philippines. Now, in Australia, talking of Australia, that's where I come from, 30 days and under, you don't need a visa to go to the Philippines. I've checked with the embassy, and you don't need a visa. It used to be 21 days, I think, or 20 days, but now in the last couple of years they've increased that to 30 days. So under 30 days, you're sweet, you don't need a visa. But at anything 30 or more, I believe you do, or more than 30, you do. So be very wary of that, because you don't want to get to the airport and find out you need a visa. And get it all organised well before. So when you're going, and the day comes and you've got to get to your international flight, you want to be there a minimum of 3 hours before. Okay, you don't want to be there any later or than 3 hours. You want to get there 3 hours before if possible, because you've got to get through. Depending on the airport, you might have to get from one side of the airport to the other. You've got to go through customs. You've got to check your bag. You've got to, there's a whole range of things you've got to do. And sometimes if there's a lot of people there in line, it can take some time to get through those checking points and all that sort of stuff. So give yourself a minimum of 3 hours before you get there. Don't think, oh, well, 3 hours is plenty. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. You just don't know what you're going to get. So give yourself plenty of time. You don't want any dramas at the start of your vacation that's going to really put you on the wrong foot, all right? So 3 hours before minimum is my advice. I usually get there around about 4 hours before if I can. Although on this trip, we're not going to have that luxury of that, because our flight from Dubbo to Sydney only lands a couple of hours before the other international flight takes off. But Qantas has assured me that's fine. I can check our bags through and all this sort of stuff. So touch wood, let's hope that is fine. But generally speaking, 3 hours. So once you get past the immigration point and you've gone in towards where your gate is, so you find out your gate. So when you know that, once you go through immigration, you've got on your boarding pass, it should have the gate number. check that what that is, and say for example it says gate 20. Check up on the screens. You'll have screens, departure screens. Check up and it will tell you if it's on time, whatever. Boarding pass doesn't have a gate on it. Sometimes they don't. Keep checking those screens because that will tell you which gate. Then once you go through to that gate and you're waiting, don't turn around and go back out past the immigration and customs and all that. Don't go back out, because then you've got to go through the whole process to get back in again. So stay there. Don't be tempted to go wandering back out, because otherwise you're going to have a hell of a time and you could just end up missing your flight. That would be pretty disastrous at the start of your holidays. And some people do actually go wandering around. They get a bit bored waiting and they go wandering around. Before they know it, they're outside of where they should be, and they've got to do that whole process again. Take something comfortable for your plane. You know, things like little pillows, little travel pillows. Take that along. I've actually got. I'll put a link below because I've got a good travel pillow there that you can purchase at a reasonable price, as well as travel adapter. I did a video on that. I did a while back, a good travel adapter. So I'll also put a link on that where you can get some good travel adapters at cheap price, because obviously when you go to another country, you're going to want to power your stuff up. If you've got cameras, if you've got laptops and all that sort of stuff, you want to power up. So take a good travel adapter with you. Remember when you first get to the airport, they do have money changes at the airport where you can change your currency, as you need it. Usually there is a limit on it. It's not a lot, but you might just need a couple of thousand pesos when you go to the Philippines just to get yourself a taxi and get yourself set. That they will charge you a bit more for your fees. So again, recommend using your Western Union or whatever other source that you're going to use, or even your debit card, than using the money changes, I think. Remember, food at the airports are always expensive. Food and drink are always way more expensive than you need to pay. So, if you want a little bit of a munch while you're waiting, take some snacks along, a packet of chips, nuts, whatever. Take them with you in your bag, in your carry-on bag, and then you can have a bit of a munch while you're waiting. The one things that are pretty much the same price are things like McDonald's, KFC, that sort of stuff. You can get pretty much good feed there for around about what you'd normally pay. So that's the other option too. If you don't take your food, and you want something to eat, go and get Macca's or KFC. Taxis at Manila Airport. So be very careful when you get there. When you go outside, there'll be taxis everywhere, and there'll be people trying to come with me. I'll give you a taxi. I'll take you here, take you there, whatever. And they'll try and coax you into paying for an expensive ride. Now, always get a metered taxi. Always ask, is this metered? Is this on the meter? If they say no, you don't want it. You want to know the meter is what you want, because they might charge you 500 pesos for a taxi ride that would normally cost 100 pesos or 150 pesos. So always get it metered. So if they can't tell you it's metered, you don't want it. And be prepared. There are going to be a lot of people coming at you and asking, hey, come here, that sort of thing. So that's pretty much, I guess, most of the tips that I've got. So there's some obviously important ones there. If you want a very, stress-free start to your holiday, then check those off. That's a checklist for you guys who are first going to the Philippines. Anyone who's been there before would have done all this before. So I hope this has helped the newbies going there. If you've got any questions you'd like answered, put them below. I'd like to hear people's experiences. What mistakes you've made when you've gone to the Philippines to start with. I know I've made a few, but that could be another video, eh? But yeah, let's hear your thoughts about this and your experiences. It'd be fantastic. Don't forget to share the video around. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell to get more videos every couple of days. Alright guys, thanks very much for watching. Appreciate your support. Take care. Bye bye.